Hi everybody, today I'm working on a 2004 Mini Cooper S. Today I'm going to be replacing the valve cover gasket. These are common leakers on these cars, but it's not always obvious they're leaking because they tend to leak out the backside of the engine. As always, I'll put a link in the video description where you can get the parts and tools I use for this job. So looking on top, everything looks nice and dry, but if we look around the backside, you can see just a little tiny bit of moisture at the seam between the valve cover and the cylinder head, but it's not a lot at all, so you think it's not a big deal. But when I go under the car, we can see quite a bit of moisture on the back side of the engine here, and this is commonly misdiagnosed as a oil pan gasket leak, or if you look up in between the axle on the back side of the block, you can see the oil filter housing, and it's wet, and it's also commonly misdiagnosed as an oil filter housing leak. Both of those gaskets do leak, but the valve cover usually leaks more quickly. And if we go further back and look up, you can see moisture on the back side of the cylinder head. It's a little bit hard to see, but what happens is the oil drips all along the back side of the block and ends up down here on the back side of the oil pan. So the biggest strange tools we're going to need for the job is a long extension for 1/4 inch and a 8mm deep drive. And it's best if this extension has a swivel on the end so that we can put it at a little bit of an angle. We'll need a Torx T30 socket as well, a bent nose pair of pliers, and a screwdriver. And that should be all of the weird stuff. Not that a flathead screwdriver is weird. So to get the valve cover off, we first have to take off the intercooler. Next we'll take off these 4 bolts holding the intercooler boots. These are Torx 30. Then we'll loosen these brackets that hold the intercooler in place. And I take off one bolt and I just loosen the other one, so I swing it out of the way. Less bolts to keep track of. Oh yeah, these are 8mm bolts. And we take these brackets off. Next I'm going to grab the intercooler and pull towards the right side of the car and then squeeze it out. So now we can see the reason we have to take the intercooler off. These aluminum ears here that hold the intercooler in place are obstructing with removal of the valve cover. So I'm going to pop this little clip out. Next I'm going to pinch the hose and pull back for the PCV. And be careful with this part because it cracks easily. Next I'm going to pinch this clamp and slide it back as far as I can. And then I'm going to use the bent nose and slide it off. Kind of walk it off. Now I'm going to pop the spark plug boots, and I'm just going to kind of pinch them and push against the valve cover gasket and then pop them out. And the next couple I'm going to push on top of the other boot. And then the last one I'm going to press against the valve cover again. Now I'm going to disconnect the coil pack wire, and there's a little red clip here, so we have to kind of push it, and it's easiest to do this with a screwdriver. And then I can pinch down and gently slide it off. Now I'm going to remove these ears, and they're held on by 8mm bolts as well. Wiggle it out of there. I like to put these on top of the intercooler so I don't forget to put them back in before I put the intercooler in. This one's a little bit crowded, so that's why I use the swivel with the deep drive. There's 3 bolts here. You can see 2, and there's another one underneath. And this one on the side here, it's a little bit hard to get a straight shot. Then just feel on the bottom for the last bolt and loosen. One of the bolts is hidden under here, so we have to take off these little mounting plastic thingies. There's 2 more in the back here holding the wire for the coil pack. Now all we have to do is remove these 8mm bolts holding down the valve cover. Sometimes the bolts on the front can be rusty from road salt getting sprayed into the car from the intercooler. If that happens, you take the next smaller socket size down and just hammer it over the bolts and pull them out. And it's probably a good idea to replace them if they're rusty. Okay, once you've gotten all the bolts loosened, take a flathead screwdriver and pry along the edges here. Just gently pry, and it should pop free. And if it doesn't, you've probably missed a bolt. So now we can lift up, flip it over, and there we go. Now we can take something pointy and pry the old gasket out. I generally don't do the spark plug boots because they don't really often leak. But if you are replacing these, you're just going to take your screwdriver, get under here, and just kind of pry it out, and then pound the new ones in with a block of wood or some socket that's large enough. All right, we'll go get the new gasket. And these are super easy to install. You just find this part with the round lump here for the cam. Then we just kind of squeeze it in to the little groove on the bottom of the valve cover. And you do not need to use RTV silicone. Once you've got it all pushed in, just go around and check your work and make sure there's no high spots. And then we'll flip it back over. And wiggle it back down. Be careful on the left here. Usually this wire for the cam sensor likes to get in between the valve cover and the head. I'll grab a towel and wipe everything down, get rid of all the excess oil. Then we'll screw everything back down, and I'll start from the inside and work my way out. And they just need to be snug. Alright, now we'll put the spark plugs back in. So the cylinders are numbered 1, 2, 3, 4. It's really easy to get 4 and 3 mixed up. Just push in, press until you hear it click. So this is 3, this is 4. I'll spray a little lubricant here to make the hose slide on easier. This one can be quite stiff. I'll squeeze the hose clamp as I do it. And this one you just kind of push it back on. Then we'll go get those brackets. We'll slide this bracket underneath. And we'll get a couple bolts started before we tighten any of them all the way. And we'll go back and tighten them. Alright, now we put the intercooler back on. Again, I'm going to put some spray here to make it slip on more easily. I'm using silicone spray, but anything slippery will work. And I'll put it in the way I took it off. And I'm going to kind of push in that direction until the gasket is mostly squished up against the intercooler. Then I'm going to take something with a round and narrow shank, like a small screwdriver, and I'm going to slip it in and kind of work the gasket back in place. Just like this. Be careful not to poke through it. There we go. And if this method makes you nervous, loosen these two Torx 30 on this side, and then you can slide this boot back farther, and then this end will go in more easily, and then slide everything back in again. Now we can swing these guys back in place. And before tightening anything down, you want to make sure you can see the holes through the middle here. Then we'll put these brackets back on. And again, before tightening, take a look underneath. It's going to be hard to show you on camera, but take a look underneath and make sure nothing's pinched, or you'll get a massive air leak. And when that happens, the throttle will go up. The idle speed will be like 2,000 RPM or something. Then we'll put these 8mm bolts back in. And then last but not least, we'll put the intercooler cover back on. This one's missing a bolt. And done. That's all there is to it. I showed you how to do this on a Cooper S. The process is super similar on a Mini Cooper base. The only difference is obviously no intercooler, and the coil pack wire runs across the top of the valve cover. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for watching, and bye-bye.